5 years of cheap magnets, diamonds for his best friend. I slid the heavy brass keys across the polished marble desk. The real estate agent, a sharply dressed woman who had spent the last 4 months helping me close on this property, stared at them in utter astonishment. "Clara, the earnest money is already in escrow," she said softly, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. "Aren't you going to at least wait for Nolan to fly back from Europe to sign the termination papers? This is a massive financial hit." I gave a dry, hollow smile. "There's no need to wait. He's too busy showing his first love, the Swiss Alps." For 5 years, Nolan had flown to Switzerland every winter. He claimed it was for an annual global tech summit. He would text me from the airport, complain about the jet lag, and post scenic, empty landscapes of the snow-capped Matterhorn on his Instagram. "When are we going to take a trip like that?" I would ask, staring at the screen from our cramped city apartment. "When can we have our honeymoon?" "Next time, Clara," he would always reply, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "We don't need to blow our savings on frivolous things right now. We need to be smart. Let's just live realistically." I believed him. I believed every single word, right up until yesterday. While packing up his home office for the move into our newly purchased suburban colonial, I found an old Leica digital camera shoved in the back of a desk drawer. The battery was barely clinging to life, but it turned on. Inside were dozens of photos. The exact same woman. The exact same angles. The exact same snowy backgrounds. Daphne standing beneath pine trees. Daphne holding a snowboard. Daphne laughing in front of the Matterhorn. And the only trip he had ever taken with me in half a decade was a 40-minute drive to the suburbs to sign the mortgage on our new house. Looking at the closing documents on the realtor's desk, documents for a house I had spent 4 months painstakingly designing and renovating entirely on my own, I suddenly broke. A single tear tracked hotly down my cheek. The agent carefully pushed a silver pen across the desk. "Clara, do you really want to return it?" I wiped my cheek, my spine straightening. Return it. My corporate resignation had already been approved that morning. This was my last night in this city. The Alps wouldn't come to me, but I could go far, far away. Chapter 1: The Souvenirs of Betrayal. "Clara, tell me you didn't actually return the house." My best friend Bridget's voice blared through the car speakers the moment I turned over the engine. "I returned it, Bridge." "You just threw away a massive deposit?" "Without a word?" "Yes." "Does Nolan even know?" "He's in Zermatt." "On his business trip?" Bridget's voice was laced with skepticism. I didn't answer. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the car. "Clara, have you told him yet?" "No." "Clara, listen to me. Even if you guys are in a rough patch, throwing away the house." "I found his old camera, Bridget," I interrupted, my voice dead and flat. "I found 5 years' worth of photos. The same woman, the same mountain, the same romantic getaways. 5 years straight." The line went dead quiet. "Daphne?" "Yes." "Are you absolutely sure it's not a misunderstanding? Maybe she was just at the same conference?" "Have you ever heard of a business trip where a man spends 5 consecutive years taking professional-grade, romantic portraits of one single woman?" Bridget didn't say another word. I hung up and drove back to the apartment. Halfway there, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Nolan. A picture of a ceramic mug filled with hot chocolate, a delicate snowflake pattern dusted in cocoa powder on top. "Snowing in Zermatt. Freezing out here. Miss you." I recognized that mug. Last winter, he had sent me the exact same photo, the exact same composition. When I had asked him what lodge he was at, he had casually replied, "Just some random spot off the slopes. Can't remember the name." But I had seen the photos on the Leica. Daphne was sitting at that exact table, that exact hot chocolate resting in front of her, smiling radiantly at the lens. She had been wearing a wine-red cashmere scarf. 5 years. The same lodge. The same hot chocolate. The same woman. And the photos he sent me only ever featured empty landscapes and food. He never showed his face, because she was always sitting across from him. When I walked into our apartment, I kicked off my heels. I glanced down at the shoe rack by the door. Sitting neatly next to Nolan's expensive running shoes was a pair of pristine white designer loafers. Size 6. I wear a size 8. I bent down and pulled up the leather insole of the right shoe. Tucked underneath was a folded sticky note. "Noli, make sure I change into these next time I come over. Those heels you bought me last week are killing my arches. Daph." Noli. We had been together for 5 years, and I had never heard that nickname in my life. He hated nicknames. He strictly told me to call him Nolan. I put the shoe back exactly where I found it and walked into the bedroom. His MacBook was still resting on his desk, asleep. I tapped the spacebar. The browser was open to a luxury travel booking site. Aspen, Colorado. Departure February 14th. 5-star ski-in/ski out lodge. Private hot tub. Couples massage. In the reservation notes, he had typed, "Surprise birthday getaway for Daphne." Daphne's birthday is February 15th. My birthday is March 9th. Last year on March 9th, I had practically begged him to leave the office by 7 p.m. so we could have dinner. He texted me that he was locked in a corporate networking event. I sat on the couch in full makeup until 11:30 p.m. His text finally came through at midnight, "Just walked in. You asleep? Happy birthday, Clara. I'll make it up to you next time." Next time. The ghost of our entire relationship. I opened the iCloud sync to his laptop. Over 4,000 photos. I searched my own name. 11 photos. 7 were from our first year of dating. In the last 4 years, he had taken exactly 4 pictures of me. I clicked on a folder titled Winter Lights. It was filled to the brim with photos of Daphne. Daphne walking through the snow in a designer trench coat. Daphne praying playfully in front of a historic Swiss clock tower. The lighting was soft, the framing meticulous, every shot looked like an editorial spread for Vogue. Whenever he took photos of me, the angle was always crooked, the lighting harsh. When I once asked if he could put a little effort into a nice photo of us, he had sighed in annoyance. "We aren't models, Clara. Just okay is fine. Just okay is fine." That was his life philosophy when it came to me. My phone rang, pulling me from the screen. A FaceTime call from Nolan. I answered it. He appeared on the screen wearing a sharp gray wool coat, walking down a carpeted hotel hallway. "Hey. Have you eaten?" "Yes. I'm flying back the day after tomorrow. Wheels down at 3 p.m. "Okay. You sound off. Your voice is flat." "I'm just tired from the move." "Right. Well, get some rest." He was about to hang up when a bright, feminine voice echoed from behind the camera. "Noli. The black car is downstairs." Nolan briefly turned his head. "Coming." He looked back at the screen, entirely unbothered. "Daphne is calling me. I've got to run." "Why is Daphne at your hotel in Switzerland?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "She's in the room next door. We grabbed dinner. She had a marketing convention in Geneva and took the train over." "You two just happen to coincide in the Alps every single year?" "It's just a coincidence, Clara. Don't overthink it." He let out an easy, dismissive laugh, the laugh of a man who firmly believed his fiancé was too naive to ever connect the dots. "Oh, by the way, I bought you a bunch of great souvenirs. I spent hours picking them out. See you soon." He hung up. I walked into the kitchen and stared at the stainless steel refrigerator. 5 magnets were stuck to the door. 5 cheap, generic Swiss cowbell magnets, bought in different years, likely at the airport kiosk. 5 years of devotion. 5 $5 magnets. Meanwhile, Daphne received luxury hot springs, custom jewelry, surprise birthday trips to Aspen, and a pet name. My phone lit up. Nolan had texted a photo of a new magnet, a cartoonish St. Bernard still in its plastic wrapping. Isn't it cute? Daphne helped me pick it out for you. Even my pathetic table scraps involved her. I typed out a message, "What did you pick out for Daphne?" My thumb hovered over the send button. I stared at the words. Then, slowly, I deleted them. I typed a single word and hit send. Okay. Chapter 2, The Art of Living Realistically. Nolan arrived home on Thursday evening. He wheeled his Tumi luggage into the entryway, unzipped the front pocket, and pulled out a small, crinkled paper bag. He tossed it onto the kitchen island. "Here you go." The magnet. Then, he reached into his heavy overcoat and pulled out a massive, pristine Neiman Marcus shopping bag, placing it gently on the console table. "What's that?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "For Daphne. A scarf." She said the cold air was drying out her skin, and I found this great boutique. The tissue paper was slightly parted, revealing a dark crimson scarf made of pure, heavy cashmere. Last winter, the heating in our apartment had broken for 3 days. I had mentioned wanting a high-quality cashmere scarf. Nolan had rolled his eyes. "What's the point of blowing hundreds on a scarf, Clara? Don't you already have 5 scarves in the closet?" Every scarf in my closet was acrylic, and I had bought every single one of them with my own money. "Did you buy that with your own card?" I asked. "Yeah," she asked me to grab it. "I'll just eat the cost, it's no big deal," he said casually, kicking off his shoes and dropping onto the living room sofa with a heavy sigh. "I'm exhausted. That flight was brutal." "When are you going to take me to Switzerland, Nolan?" He froze. His head snapped toward me. "Why are you suddenly bringing this up right now?" I just walked through the door. "It's not sudden. I've been asking for 5 years." He rubbed his temples in performative exhaustion. "Clara, let's just get through this busy season with the house move and the wedding prep. Maybe next time, okay?" Next time. That was the 17th time he had used that exact phrase. I had kept count. I didn't say another word. An hour later, as I was plating a cold dinner, his mother called my phone. "Clara, sweetie, is Nolan back yet?" "He's here, Evelyn." "Wonderful. Listen, you two really need to finalize the caterers. The extended family is breathing down my neck about the invitations." "I'm still finalizing the menu," I replied mechanically. "Well, Daphne came over to the house last week to help me taste test. We picked out 4 amazing hors d'oeuvres options. I'll send you the pictures to see if you approve." My hand, holding a fork, hovered in midair. "Daphne helped you pick our wedding catering?" "Oh, yes. She said you were so swamped with corporate life that she wanted to proactively step in. She's just the sweetest, most thoughtful girl." I glanced into the living room. Nolan was aggressively scrolling through his phone. "Evelyn, you can just call me directly about the wedding. You don't need to bother Daphne." "Oh, it's no bother at all. She comes over for tea 3 or 4 times a month anyway. She's more diligent about visiting than Nolan is." "Clara, I'm just going to be honest with you. I've watched Daphne grow up. She knows Nolan's soul. You're a very successful woman, but you are very cold. You don't know how to take care of a man. You could really learn a lot from Daphne's warmth." I set the phone face down on the counter. Nolan walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. He pulled open his coat, and a small, crimson velvet jeweler's box fell out of the inner pocket, clattering onto the hardwood floor. It popped open. Resting inside was a stunning, delicate silver chain. The pendant was a perfectly crafted Edelweiss flower, and right in the center, paved in tiny diamonds, was the letter N. "What is that?" I asked. Nolan hastily picked it up, a flash of genuine panic crossing his face before he smoothed it into indifference. "Oh, this. It's a birthday gift for Daphne. You had a bespoke diamond necklace commissioned for her?" "It took 2 months to arrive," he said proudly, before catching himself. "I mean, it's just a small token of appreciation. When he proposed to me, he had ordered the engagement ring online. When the cardboard shipping box arrived, he didn't even wrap it. He just opened it in the kitchen and handed it to me. When I had previously mentioned wanting to go to a jeweler together to pick out a setting, he had scoffed. Diamonds are all the same, Clara. Why waste a Saturday sitting in a showroom?" "You spent 2 months customizing a diamond necklace for Daphne," I said, my voice eerily calm. "What did you get me for my birthday last year, Nolan?" He paused. His eyes darted toward the ceiling as he actively struggled to remember. Didn't I send you a Venmo for dinner?" "You didn't." "Well, work was insane. I forgot. I'll make it up to you next time." "Next time. Always next time. Nolan, look me in the eye. Do you think our relationship is normal? Why wouldn't it be?" he asked defensively. "Clara, I'm just going to be honest with you. I've watched Daphne grow up. She knows Nolan's soul. You're a very successful woman, but you are very cold. You don't know how to take care of a man. You could really learn a lot from Daphne's warmth." I set the phone face down on the counter. Nolan walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. He pulled open his coat, and a small, crimson velvet jeweler's box fell out of the inner pocket, clattering onto the hardwood floor. It popped open. Resting inside was a stunning, delicate silver chain. The pendant was a perfectly crafted Edelweiss flower, and right in the center, paved in tiny diamonds, was the letter N. "What is that?" I asked. Nolan hastily picked it up, a flash of genuine panic crossing his face before he smoothed it into indifference. "Oh, this. It's a birthday gift for Daphne. You had a bespoke diamond necklace commissioned for her?" "It took 2 months to arrive," he said proudly, before catching himself. "I mean, it's just a small token of appreciation. When he proposed to me, he had ordered the engagement ring online. When the cardboard shipping box arrived, he didn't even wrap it. He just opened it in the kitchen and handed it to me. When I had previously mentioned wanting to go to a jeweler together to pick out a setting, he had scoffed. Diamonds are all the same, Clara. Why waste a Saturday sitting in a showroom?" "You spent 2 months customizing a diamond necklace for Daphne," I said, my voice eerily calm. "What did you get me for my birthday last year, Nolan?" He paused. His eyes darted toward the ceiling as he actively struggled to remember. Didn't I send you a Venmo for dinner?" "You didn't." "Well, work was insane. I forgot. I'll make it up to you next time." "Next time. Always next time. Nolan, look me in the eye. Do you think our relationship is normal? Why wouldn't it be?" he asked defensively. "You custom-order jewelry for Daphne, but you buy me airport magnets. You throw surprise birthday trips for her to Aspen, but you don't even remember my birthday. You let her play daughter-in-law at your mother's house, while I am treated like an intruding business partner. Do you honestly believe this is a normal marriage?" He slammed his water glass down on the counter. "You're starting this again? She is my childhood best friend. What is wrong with treating her well? What about how you treat me? Do I not provide for you?" he yelled. "We've been together for 5 years. We just bought a massive house in the suburbs. We are planning a wedding. Is that not enough for you?" He pointed a finger at me, his face red. "Clara, stop obsessing over this frivolous, romantic nonsense. Stop comparing yourself. Just live realistically. That is what adults do. No frivolous things. The luxury hot springs in Switzerland were frivolous. The diamond Edelweiss necklace was frivolous. The surprise getaways were frivolous. And he willingly poured every ounce of his frivolity, his romance, and his passion into Daphne. The only thing he reserved for me was the cold, sterile command to live realistically. "You're right," I said quietly, turning off the kitchen light and walking toward the bedroom. "We will live realistically." Chapter 3: The Gathering. The following Saturday, Nolan's college roommate, Garrett, hosted a dinner party at an upscale downtown bistro. When Nolan and I walked into the private dining room, Daphne was already seated at the center of the table. She was wearing a pristine white cashmere sweater dress, and resting beautifully against her collarbone was the diamond Edelweiss necklace. It sparkled aggressively under the ambient lighting. She waved brightly. Nolan walked straight over and naturally pulled out the chair directly beside her, sitting down before I had even taken off my coat. I was forced to take the seat on his opposite side, rendering me a physical afterthought. "Hey, future sister-in-law." Daphne beamed at me, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Don't call me sister-in-law yet, Daph," Nolan chuckled, pouring her a glass of wine. "We aren't married yet." "Well, you basically are," Garrett laughed from the head of the table. "Daphne's been practically planning the whole wedding. She told me she was at your mom's house tasting the menu." Daphne looked down, coyly tracing the rim of her wine glass. "I just wanted to help the bride-to-be out. Clara is so corporate and busy, someone had to do the warm, domestic stuff." "Daphne, that necklace is stunning," Garrett's girlfriend gasped, leaning over the table. "Is it custom?" Daphne's hand fluttered up to the end pendant. She shot a covert, gleaming look at Nolan. "It is. Someone very generous had it made for me." "Wow. Did you buy that for her, Nolan?" Garrett asked, raising an eyebrow. "I did," Nolan said smoothly. "It was a birthday gift." The table went slightly quiet. The women exchanged loaded glances. "You custom-ordered diamonds for your female friend right before your wedding?" Garrett's girlfriend asked, unable to hide her cringe. "Clara doesn't care for jewelry," Nolan interjected quickly, answering for me. "She thinks it's a waste of money." "Right, Clara?" I looked at him. I looked at Daphne, who was watching me with triumphant, predatory eyes. "Sure," I said flatly. Garrett, sensing the suffocating tension, clapped his hands. "All right, let's play a game. Couples trivia. Let's see how well the groom actually knows the bride." "Nolan, what is Clara's favorite flower?" Nolan opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the ceiling. Roses. White ones. Bellflowers," I corrected quietly. "I told you on our first date." Right, Nolan waved it off. "Okay, next. What is Clara's biggest phobia?" Nolan laughed. "She isn't afraid of anything. Clara is basically a machine. She's fearless." "I am terrified of deep water," I said, staring directly into his eyes. "I nearly drowned when I was 6. I've told you 3 times." An agonizing silence fell over the room. Daphne giggled, breaking the ice. "Okay, my turn. Let's see if Clara knows Nolan." "Clara, what is Nolan most terrified of?" I stared at my plate. "I don't know. He never tells me." Daphne smiled, a slow, victorious smirk. "He's terrified of thunderstorms. When he was 5, lightning struck the oak tree in his front yard and split it in half. He hid under his bed for 2 days." She looked around the table, basking in the attention. "He hates hot coffee, he only drinks iced Americanos, even in winter. And he cannot sleep unless the room is exactly 66 degrees. She knew his soul. She knew his childhood trauma. Whenever I asked Nolan deep questions about his past, he would shrug and say, "Nothing to tell, Clara." Just a normal childhood. With me, he was a brick wall. With Daphne, he was an open book. I stood up, pushing my chair back. The leg scraped loudly against the hardwood. I'm going to head home, I said smoothly. I have an early morning. Clara, come on, don't be a buzzkill, Nolan groaned, clearly embarrassed. I'll call an Uber. Enjoy your evening. I walked out of the restaurant into the freezing night air. Daphne followed me into the vestibule. Clara, wait, she called out. I turned around. The innocent, sweet facade had vanished. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, and cold. I'm going to be blunt with you, Daphne said, crossing her arms. You are making Nolan miserable. If you can't even handle a simple trivia game without throwing a tantrum, this marriage is doomed. Every time he went to Switzerland, he was with you, I said, my voice void of emotion. What do you expect me to feel? She smiled a razor-thin smile. It was work, Clara. I had conventions. We just met up. Work doesn't require sharing the exact same hotel, the exact same ski lodges, and staging romantic photo shoots every year while lying to your fiancé. Her smile remained, but her eyes darkened. Listen to me carefully. I am Nolan's oldest friend. If you want to view me as a threat, that is your insecurity talking. But I'm not going anywhere. Oh, and by the way. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I told Nolan to change the living room walls in the new house to a warm greige. He completely agreed with me. That sterile, hospital white you picked out was incredibly depressing. I had spent 4 weeks interviewing painters, selecting the perfect milky white for that suburban house. Nolan had never once come to the property to check on the progress. But with one single sentence from Daphne, my choices were overwritten. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just looked at her, truly looked at her, and realized I was fighting a war I had already lost 5 years ago. Have a good night, Daphne, I said, and walked out the door. Chapter 4, The Clean Break. Saturday morning. The apartment smelled of cheap drip coffee and cold toast. Nolan, are we going to the hardware store today? I asked, sitting at the kitchen island. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere, he said, scrolling through his phone. I'll spend the whole day with you. We can pack up the rest of the guest room. I nodded. For a brief, pathetic second, I thought maybe we could have one normal day. His phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and his posture immediately shifted. He answered it, his voice dropping to an urgent hush. Daph? What's wrong? A burst pipe? How much water? Okay, don't panic. The super is out of town? Fine. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, practically sprinting to the closet to grab his coat. Where are you going? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. Daphne's loft flooded. A pipe burst in her kitchen. I have to go help her move her furniture before the water ruins it. Call a professional water mitigation company, Nolan. It will take them an hour to get there. They cost a fortune, Clara. She can't afford that right now. Just 2 nights ago, I had asked him to help me carry 3 heavy boxes of books down to the moving truck. He had rubbed his lower back, winced, and said, Clara, just hire a TaskRabbit. My back is killing me, I can't be hauling boxes. But for Daphne, he was suddenly Hercules. Nolan, I said, not moving from my stool. Do you truly believe you treat her like a friend, and me like a fiancé? He stopped at the door, clearly irritated by the delay. She is in a crisis, Clara. Yes, I treat her well, it's a habit. But you are the one I am marrying. You are getting the house, the ring, the life. Isn't that enough for you? Go, I said quietly. He didn't hesitate. The door slammed shut behind him. I sat in the silence of the apartment for 10 minutes. The cold toast sat on my plate. The coffee stopped steaming. I stood up. I walked into the bedroom, pulled my Samsonite suitcase from the top shelf of the closet, and opened it on the mattress. I packed exactly what I had brought into this relationship 5 years ago. 2 pairs of jeans. A handful of sweaters. My laptop. My toiletries. I walked into the bathroom. On the vanity, my existence was reduced to a toothbrush and a bottle of face wash. Daphne's existence was everywhere. Her spare curling iron under the sink. Her expensive face cream. Her designer canvas loafers by the door. I walked into the kitchen and slipped the diamond engagement ring off my finger. The metal felt heavy, but leaving it felt weightless. I placed it perfectly in the center of the kitchen island. Then, I went to the refrigerator. I peeled off the 5 cheap Swiss magnets. I lined them up in a perfect, straight row right next to the ring. I pulled out a notepad and wrote a single line. The wedding is cancelled. You can keep the ring, the magnets, and the house. For your honeymoon, you already have the perfect travel partner. I zipped my suitcase. I booked a one-way flight to Chicago, where my former firm had offered me an executive transfer 6 months ago, an offer I had declined because Nolan didn't want to leave his roots. I dragged my suitcase to the front door. I looked around the apartment one last time. The dent in the sofa where he sat. The coaster stained by Daphne's teacups. I pulled the door shut behind me, the lock clicking into place like a gunshot. By the time I landed at O'Hare, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls. 27 missed calls from Nolan. 8 from Bridget. I called Bridget as I stood at the baggage claim. Clara. Thank God. Where are you? Bridget screamed into the phone. I'm in Chicago. I took the transfer. You left? You quit your job here and left the state? Yes. Clara, Nolan is losing his absolute mind. He called me an hour ago in a complete panic. He said he came home and your stuff was just gone. He doesn't understand why you left. He said you guys were perfectly fine. We were perfectly fine. A fiancé who designed and renovated an entire house alone, who sat in an apartment while her partner took his best friend to the Alps for 5 years, who finally packed her entire life into one suitcase and vanished, and in his eyes, things were perfectly fine. Bridget, do me a favor, I said, watching my suitcase drop onto the carousel. Don't tell him where I am. Let him live realistically. Chapter 5, The Weight of an Empty House. I rented a beautiful, modern one-bedroom apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. It was a fraction of the size of the suburban house I had bought, but the walls were my color, the air was mine, and there were no ghosts in the closets. 3 days after I left, I received a call from an unknown number. Clara? It's Garrett. Garrett. What do you need? He exhaled heavily into the receiver. I just needed to make sure you were alive. Nolan has been sitting in my living room for 3 hours staring at a wall. He'll survive. Clara, he found the note. And the magnets. Garrett's voice was grim. He asked me if 5 magnets were really all he had ever brought back for you from Europe. I didn't know what to say. He pulled out his phone and started counting his photos. He realized he only had 11 pictures of you. He counted Daphne's photos until he hit 300, and then he just threw his phone at the wall. I stayed silent, looking out at the freezing waters of the lake. He showed me your last messages, Garrett continued softly. He told me, she asked me for things 17 times. And I told her next time every single time. I never did it once. It's too late for epiphanies, Garrett. I know. But I thought you should know. He went to the house today. My breath hitched slightly. The wedding house? Yeah. He went to the realtor to get the keys. The agent told him you had officially returned it to the sellers and absorbed the escrow penalty. He begged them to let him walk through it just once. And? He stayed in there until after dark. He called me crying, Clara. I've known this guy for a decade and I've never heard him cry. He said he walked in and realized what you had built. The misty blue curtains in the bedroom. The custom floor-to-ceiling bookshelves in the study you drafted by hand. The mint you planted on the balcony. I spent 4 months building a home he refused to visit, I said coldly. He knows. He told me he sat on the floor in the empty living room and realized that while he was busy painting the walls gray to please Daphne, you had built an entire future that he never bothered to step inside. Tell him not to contact me, Garrett. I hung up. A week later, Daphne found my new number. Clara, what is going on with Nolan? He came to my apartment yesterday and packed up every single thing I owned in a garbage bag and threw it on my porch. He canceled our Aspen trip. He demanded the Edelweiss necklace back. I stared at the screen. He took the necklace back. Are you doing this out of jealousy? Daphne's texts kept rolling in. If you are blowing up a 5-year relationship just because he is kind to me, you are making a massive mistake. He's just a nice guy. You are so insecure. I typed back slowly. Daphne, he flew you to the Alps for 5 years while I sat in his apartment. He bought you diamonds while he bought me plastic magnets. He let you plan my wedding. This isn't insecurity. It's clarity. The chat bubble showed her typing for a long, long time. Finally, a voice memo came through. Clara, I'm going to tell you the brutal truth because you need to hear it. Daphne's voice was laced with a venomous, arrogant pity. Nolan has always had my heart, and I have always had his. He stayed with you because you are stable. You are suitable for marriage, Clara. You pay the bills, you renovate the houses, you keep the schedule. You are suitable for living day by day. But I am the woman he actually loves. There is a difference. I listened to the audio message twice. My blood ran ice cold, but my mind was sharper than a diamond. I forwarded the voice memo directly to Nolan's phone. I added one single text. She's right. I'm going somewhere to be loved. Chapter 6, The 47 Promises. A month passed. The Chicago winter was brutal, but I was thriving. I had been promoted to regional director. My apartment was filled with fresh bellflowers every Sunday. On a freezing Tuesday afternoon, the receptionist at my corporate office buzzed my desk. Ms. Clara? There is a gentleman downstairs in the lobby who refuses to leave. He says his name is Nolan. I closed my laptop, my heart giving a single, heavy thud. Send him out to the plaza. I'll be down in 5 minutes. I walked out into the biting wind. Nolan was standing by the architectural fountain, shivering in a thin wool coat. He looked completely shattered. His jaw was covered in a thick, unkempt beard. The dark circles under his eyes looked like bruises. When he saw me, he took a step forward, his hands trembling. How did you find me? I asked, keeping my distance. Bridget finally cracked, he rasped, his voice wrecked. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. I wrote something. I need you to read it. I don't want to read your apologies, Nolan. It's not an apology, he said desperately. It's a ledger. I stared at him. He pulled a thick stack of handwritten papers from the envelope. I sat in that empty house you built, and I started writing down everything I owed you, Nolan said, tears welling in his bloodshot eyes. Item 1, our first anniversary. I promised to take you to the steakhouse where we met. I canceled because Daphne had a flat tire. Item 2, I promised you the Alps. I took her instead. Item 5, you asked for a scarf. I said you were being greedy. I bought her a $900 cashmere wrap. He flipped the pages, his hands shaking violently in the cold. Item 12, you asked me to move a box of books. I said my back was broken. The next morning, I moved Daphne's entire mahogany dresser up 2 flights of stairs. He looked up at me, the tears finally spilling over. 47 things, Clara. I wrote down 47 distinct times I chose her over you. 47 times I shattered your heart and told you were crazy for bleeding. Why are you showing me this? I asked, my voice cracking despite my armor. Because I finally realized what I did, he sobbed, dropping the papers onto the concrete plaza. You never screamed at me. You never broke plates. You just absorbed it. And because you were so strong, I convinced myself I wasn't hurting you. I was a coward, Clara. I wanted the stability of your love, but I wanted the thrill of her worship. And I lost the only real thing I ever had. He took a step closer, his eyes begging. I cut her off. I haven't spoken to her in a month. I took the necklace back and threw it in the river. Clara, please. Come back. Let me spend the rest of my life crossing off these 47 things. I looked at the pages fluttering on the frozen concrete. A tragic monument to a love I had desperately begged for when it actually mattered. Nolan, I said softly, the anger finally, completely gone. Daphne was right. He flinched as if I had struck him. No, she wasn't. She's toxic, she manipulated me. She was right, I repeated firmly. You looked at me and saw a foundation. You looked at her and saw fireworks. You kept me around to build your house, but you gave her the keys to your life. I pulled my coat tighter against the wind. I spent 5 years waiting for next time. But I am no longer the woman who accepts cheap magnets and empty promises. You broke me, Nolan. But in doing so, you set me free. Clara, please, he whispered, falling to his knees on the concrete, indifferent to the corporate crowd passing by. You are the one who deserves to be loved. I looked down at the man I had once worshipped. Then go be a man who knows how to love someone, I said. But you will never practice on me again. I turned on my heel and walked back toward the towering glass doors of my building. I didn't look back. A week later, a FedEx package arrived at my apartment. Inside were the final, legally binding documents terminating our shared escrow, signed in heavy black ink. Beneath the documents was a small velvet pouch. I opened it. Inside was a single, high-quality, beautifully painted magnet. It was the Chicago skyline. A note was folded at the bottom of the box. This is the symbol of your new city. I bought it at the airport. I chose it myself. For the first time. Have a beautiful life, Clara. I took the magnet and walked into my kitchen. I placed it perfectly in the center of the refrigerator door. I walked over to the window and looked out over Lake Michigan. The sunset was burning a brilliant, fierce orange across the water. The sky was vast, open, and incredibly clear. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath of air that belonged entirely to me, and smiled. The end.
Thank you for listening to today's narrative. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button right now. It's the best way to help the channel grow. To never miss a release, subscribe to the Fiction feed and turn on notifications. See ya!